Hello everyone, I am Pavani, optometrist. Today I'll be covering about the introduction to eye. So, when we talk about the eye, what is the main function of the eye? The main function of the eye is it helps us to see the world around us clearly, right? So, how do we see the objects around us clearly? There should be some medium, right? That medium is nothing but the light. So if at all, if you want to look at this candle, there should be some amount of light, either that can come from the sunlight or from the bulb or any other thing. So light should act as the medium. Okay, so if at all, if you want to look at any particular object, the light rays should fall on that object and that objects will reflect some amount of light. Okay, these reflected light rays will enter into our eyes. Okay, when it enter into our eyes, it hits the retina, it reaches the retina. This is the point where the image is formed. Okay, when the image is formed, again these signals will be sent to the brain with the help of the nerve, optic nerve. Then this brain, what it do, it interprets the image. That means what is the color of the image, what is the location of the image, everything will be done by the brain. Okay, only when it reaches to the brain we can recognize the object. Okay, so in order to see any particular object, this whole process will take place. Okay, so let's go little deeper into the subject. So what happens when the object reflects the light rays? First it reaches the cornea. Okay, this cornea is nothing but the first most anterior part of the eye. This is the place where the light rays first hits. Okay, so what is cornea? Cornea is nothing but the anterior most part of the eye. So for example, if at all, if you look at anyone's eye, what do you normally observe? The white part and the black part, right? Whatever the black part you are seeing is nothing but the cornea. So the light rays will hit the cornea, and this cornea is transparent. Why it should be transparent? Say for example, if it is not transparent, can the light rays enter into the eye? No, right? Only if it is transparent only, then the light rays will enter deeper into the eye. If it is not transparent, then the light rays cannot enter and the image is not formed. So the front surface of the eye is transparent. It is nothing but the cornea. So why do you see black color? If at all, if we observe any person's eye, we say the white part and the black part. But really it is not black. The color depends upon, the color of the eye depends upon the iris that is located behind the cornea. Okay, so cornea doesn't contain any color. It is transparent layer. Okay, it is the transparent part which is dome shaped. What do you mean by dome shaped? Why it is dome shaped? Why it can't be straight? This is because when the light rays enter into the eye, there should be some amount of refraction. Okay, and that amount of refraction will all depends upon the dioptric power of the cornea. The eye is designed in such a way that there are many refracting surfaces inside the eye. When the light rays from the infinity falls on the eye, it reaches to the retina. It converges and forms a thin focal point on the retina. In that way, eye is designed. Based on that amount of dioptric power only, the bending of the light rays or refraction of the light rays will depend. Okay, if there is no bending of the cornea, the light rays coming from the infinity will not bend properly and it doesn't reach the retina properly. Okay, so that image is not formed clearly. So the main thing you need to remember is always cornea should be clear. Only then the image will be clearer. If it is not clear, if it is not transparent, image will be blurred. So the light rays reached the cornea and these light rays got refracted. So the next question is, how does it enter into the eye and how the light rays will reach inside the retina? Okay, retina is nothing but the back part of the eye. It is something like, imagine you are in the closed room. The back part of the room is nothing but the retina. Okay, the light rays coming from the infinity will hit the retina, only then the image is formed. Okay, so when the light rays hit the cornea, it enters into the eye from the pupil. So through this pupil only the light rays will enter into the eye. If at all, if you look at someone's eyes, you'll see the smaller circular part at the center of the cornea, right? This circular part is nothing but the opening, which we call it as the pupil. From this opening only the light rays will enter into the eye. Okay, so what is the main function of the pupil? It regulates the amount of light entering into the eye. There should be some amount of light should be entered into the light. Say for example, in daytime there will be a light all around us, right? So only some amount of light we required. Then the pupil size will decrease. In night time we require more amount of light. There won't be any natural light, right? So in those cases the pupil size will increase, which we call it as dilatation. In daytime, when you go out in the outdoors, the pupil size will increase, that we call it as constriction. So how much amount of light does the eye require? Based on that, the pupil size will either increase or decrease. Mostly whenever you go out in the sun, our pupil size will decrease, because in the surroundings we will have more amount of light. That much light our eye may not require. So based on the requirement, the pupil size will increase or decrease. Okay, what happens if more amount of light enter into the eye? It damages the sensitive cells which are present in the retina. That's the reason why how much amount of light we require, only that much amount of light will enter into the eye. That whole functioning will be controlled by the pupil and the iris. Okay, so the light hits the cornea and there will be some diffraction takes place. Then it enters into the eye through the small circular opening called pupil. Through this the light rays will enter. Then it reaches to the lens. Okay, these lenses are located behind the cornea. Okay, so this is the pupil. Immediately behind the cornea will have the lens. Lens, what does it do? It focuses on the object. So the location of the object distance can vary. Either it can be closer or it can be far or it can be far away. So based upon the location of the object, it focuses. Okay, the main function of the lens is it helps to focus at the object. So most of the refraction takes place in the cornea only. So when it reaches to the lens, even this lens also diffract the amount of light entering into the eye. So the refraction majorly takes place in cornea. 70% of the refraction takes place in the cornea and remaining percent of the refraction takes place in the lens. So when the light rays hits the cornea, it bends, and when it reaches to the lens, again it bends further and then it reaches to the retina. So the main function of the lens is to focus at the object based on the location. Next comes the retina. When the light rays hits the cornea, it enters into the eye through the pupil, then it hits the lens and again some amount of refraction takes place. That means some amount of bending will be takes place. From there it reaches to the retina. Here the image is formed. And one more thing you need to remember is, whatever the image we are seeing outside, when it reaches to the retina, it will be inverted image. Okay, it will not be the exactly same. It will be, the image will be inverted when it reaches to the retina. So what does this retina do? So whatever the image is formed, those light signals will be converted into the electrical signals. Okay, so the light signals will be converted into the electric signals where? At retina. From there it will be sent to the brain. How does it send? There should be some mediator, right? So who sends the signals to the brain? That is nothing but the optic nerve. So this optic nerve, whatever the light signals are converted to electrical signals, these signals will be carried by the optic nerve to brain. Okay, so whenever these electric signals reaches the brain, there will be an area called visual cortex. In that area, the brain starts interpreting the image. Interpreting is nothing but whatever the image we are seeing, it identifies the location of the object, it identifies the shape of the object, color of the object, at what distance the object is located, and what is the size of the object. Everything related to the object is done by the brain. Where it is? It is in the visual cortex. The whole process will take place in the visual cortex, which is present in the brain. Okay, so whenever we are looking at particular object, the light rays from the object will get reflected, and those light rays will hit the anterior most part of the eye called cornea, which is transparent as well as in dome shape. Because of this dome shape and transparency, the light rays, after entering into the cornea, these light rays will get refracted through the pupil. These light rays will enter into the eye, and then it hits the lens. Even after hitting the lens, again some amount of refraction will take place, and then it reaches to the retina. This is the place where the image is formed, but the image formed in this retina will be inverted image. All the light signals will be converted into the electrical signals. This is the main function of the retina, and these electrical signals will be sent to the brain with the help of the nerve called optic nerve. This carries the information to the brain. When it reaches to the brain, in brain we have a area called visual cortex. The main function of this visual cortex is it interprets the image, whatever we are seeing, it interprets it. That means the location of the object, the color of the object, size of the object, everything it interprets about the image, and it gives the final output. Only then we can recognize the object. So all these steps to be taken place in order to see one particular image. Okay. So does this happen only in one eye? No, it happens in both the eyes. But why do we see the single image? If at all, if we are seeing with the both eyes, why do we see the single image? Why the image will be single? That thing we'll discuss in the next class. If at all, if you find this class useful, please do like, share and subscribe. See you in the next class.